I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune Reset, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome to today's Friday 5 episode, where I'm going to be sharing with you 5 chemicals that are linked to autoimmune disease. Now I know when it comes to environmental exposures and chemicals, it can all sound quite scary because the truth is we all want to just live a normal life as much as possible. There are some ways that we can minimize the exposure of these chemicals. And remember, when it comes to an autoimmune condition or a chronic illness, it ordinarily isn't just one thing. There are lots of things going on in the body, but the more that we can minimize our exposure to things, the better. And that's why I want to share with you 5 chemicals to watch out for when it comes to your environment. And that means when it comes to the food you're eating, what you're packing your food in, what you're cooking your food in, what's in your cleaning products. So I'm going to share these with you today. And as I said, this isn't in any way to scare you. I dabble in this a lot. I do my best to reduce toxicity in my life, but the truth is we are all going to have a small amount of exposure. If you're living a normal life, it's very hard to avoid completely, but just do your best and don't worry too much about it. I think it's good to have this information. It's empowering, but you want always this information to be empowering rather than making you really worried about something. So let's start with the first chemical that is linked to autoimmune conditions, and that's Bisphenol A, which is referred to as BPA. And you've probably heard of Bisphenol A because there has been lots in the media about how this BPA, which is an industrial chemical that is used to make plastics and resins, can leak into our food and can leak into the liquids we're drinking like water. And they are finding more and more evidence to suggest that we have a lot of plastics in us. There's plastics in the animals we eat, there's plastics in the plants, and it is probably the result of the amount of plastics that are in our world now. And as I said, you can't avoid these completely, but it's just to be aware that Bisphenol A has been linked to autoimmune conditions, specifically how it interferes with immune function. And we know a lot of these autoimmune diseases are systemic. When our cells aren't functioning appropriately, the immune system starts to target those cells, and that can cause conditions like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, and that might be a factor when it comes to BPA. So as much as you can, it is best to minimize your exposure to BPA. So that means not using plastic bottles, using glass bottles instead, not storing your food in plastic containers. And I just went on a complete overhaul and I started to change one thing at a time. And now most of my containers and my baking trays and my water bottles are all glass. And I didn't do it overnight, but it's just good to get started with that. The other thing about BPA is it also mimics estrogen, which we know is a hormone that a lot of us need, both men and women. And when we have something that is mimicking estrogen, it means that our estrogen isn't able to work as effectively. So that's another reason why minimizing BPA is absolutely key. Next is phthalates, and phthalates are chemicals that again are used in plastic, and they make it flexible and harder to break. That's the intention of adding this chemical to our products, and it's often found in things like vinyl flooring, detergents, and our personal care products. So have a look on the back of the label. And phthalate exposure has been linked to certain autoimmune diseases like thyroid disease and systemic lupus. And it can also affect our endocrine function, similar to BPA. And the presence of phthalates in the body has been shown to alter your immune response. So that can lead to inflammation, immune dysregulation, and the development of autoimmune disease. Next is the heavy metal mercury, and mercury can be found in certain fish, it's in dental fillings, it's in industrial emissions, and the evidence isn't conclusive around dental fillings or the amount of mercury that fish contains in respect of contributing to autoimmune conditions. However, mercury exposure has been strongly linked to autoimmune diseases like multiple sclerosis and again lupus. Lupus comes up time and time again when it comes to chemical toxicity, and I expect that's because in lupus, the immune system is attacking the cell, it's attacking certain components of the cell like the DNA. And when we absorb chemicals, they can seep into our cells and cause disruption. And this may be one of the reasons why chemical toxicity is a risk factor in lupus. Now, when we're exposed to mercury, it's not just one exposure that is going to cause the issue. It's when we're exposed to it over a certain length of time. And that's why if you have mercury fillings, it seeps into the cells over time. Now, this may not be a problem for everyone. We have an amazing capacity to detox. We have evolved to have this amazing ability to detox all these types of chemicals, but it's just when we're overloaded, or we have genetic variations in our detox pathways, or we have other things going on in our body where an exposure to a chemical like this can build up over time and then can cause dysregulation of our immune system. Next are pesticides, but particularly glyphosate. And there has been lots of research into glyphosate. There's some very interesting research into glyphosate and the way that it affects gluten. And I will definitely discuss that on another podcast because it's interesting that a lot of people with autoimmune conditions have gluten sensitivity, but is it the result of how glyphosate affects gluten, which means that when we eat gluten, the immune system doesn't recognize it like it should because it has been damaged or altered by having exposure to glyphosate. So that's just a sideline thought, which we will have to pick up on another episode. But glyphosate has been used as a pesticide for many years, and it has been shown that it can increase the risk of autoimmune diseases such as celiac disease and inflammatory bowel disease. And glyphosate can disrupt the gut microbiome and intestinal lining, which we know is a risk factor in autoimmune disease and can potentially lead to leaky gut syndrome. And we know when people eat gluten, it can actually cause leaky gut syndrome. So again, there is a link there with gluten, but it is hard to eliminate all foods with pesticides, especially if you're eating out. You can't just always be buying organic, and there is an expense to eating organic all the time. So certainly check out the list on the Environmental Working Group's website, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, and any fruits or vegetables on the Clean 15 should be okay to eat non-organic, and anything on the Dirty Dozen list shouldn't be eaten if you can't get it organic. And I know strawberries are always on there, and I go to the supermarket and I see loads of delicious looking strawberries, but none of them are organic, so I don't go near them, and I will make a choice off the Clean 15 list instead. The last but not least is Triclosan, and Triclosan is an antibacterial and antifungal agent which is found in some soaps, toothpaste and cleaning products, and they have found that Triclosan is linked to autoimmune diseases like inflammatory bowel diseases and allergies. And I will always go for a more chemical free type toothpaste when I'm using toothpaste, because if you think about it, you are digesting toothpaste to a certain extent and you're exposing it to your gums, so you want to make sure that it is free of chemicals. But we should think about that in the same respect when it comes to our skin as well, because when we put in creams or anything on our skin, that is being absorbed into the skin layer. have a look at your products. Make sure if you have any antibacterial gels that there isn't triclosan in them, and just minimize your exposure as much as possible, because triclosan has been shown to alter immune function, disrupt endocrine signaling, and potentially lead to immune system imbalances. So again, look out for that on your products. And as I said at the beginning, I'm not here today to scare you, to make you feel fearful. I mean, anxiety and stress is another risk factor for autoimmune disease, but it's just helpful to be aware of these chemicals and the effect that they can have on our body. And you're not going to be able to remove them completely, but do your best to minimize them where you can. And if there are times when you can't, don't worry about it, just let it go, but do your best the rest of the time. And there is some testing that Cyrex Laboratories has, which can look into whether your immune system is reacting to these chemicals. So as with any autoimmune condition, the first thing is to look for the trigger. For example, looking at whether you have exposure to these chemicals. And then you can do testing like the Cyrex panel to look at whether your immune system is reacting to those chemicals, which means it's more likely creating an autoimmune response for you. And a chemical in and of itself can't stimulate the immune system. It has to disrupt a protein and be bound to a protein to cause that effect in the immune system, because that's how the immune system works. It presents these proteins to the immune system to fire up an inflammatory response. And the test that Cyrex has developed will look at the chemicals with the proteins, and it's a remarkable test, and I really love running it with my clients when they have tried to explore lots of different avenues when it comes to diet and their gut health and their hormone balance. And then we've gone and looked at this test, and it's incredible to see the results of this test when a chemical comes up and then linking it to how that chemical is showing up in my client's life. And when they remove that chemical, they can feel so much better. And I have a few case studies that I can share about this on another episode, because we know the Friday 5 is short and sweet. But if you have any questions about chemical toxicity and how chemicals can contribute to the development of autoimmune disease, feel free to pop over to my Instagram account, which is at the Autoimmune Nutritionist. You can also join my free group, the Autoimmune Forum. We have such an amazing community over there. I'm sharing lots of recipes, tips about autoimmune disease, and you can ask me any questions over there. I'm also running a free event, Nutrition Essentials to Beat Fatigue, next Wednesday at 8 p.m. And I will be going through some key nutrients that can help with fatigue, but also I'm going to be talking about the root causes of fatigue and what you can do to address those, so you can take a personalized approach when it comes to your health. I hope you found this episode helpful. I wish you a fantastic weekend, and I will be in touch soon. Take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time, and remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.